are joined by GridFox, and we have Craig Moss, who's the head of engagement at GridFox, on the line. He's going to be doing a presentation today, talking all about GridFox, some of the things you can do. And I think he might even be doing a little bit of a live demo. I don't want to speak for him, but pretty excited about today's event. GridFox is a super powerful tool, and excited for everybody in the NoCodeDevs community to see it. As Paul mentioned, this is being recorded. So if you have to drop off for some reason, we will email out a recording of the video a few days after the event, but we hope that you can stay through the end, of course. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Craig. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. As Art mentioned, I work for a company called GridFox. I'll explain what my role is shortly, but today we're going to be covering transforming internal processes and building an application with. So as Art mentioned, my name is Craig Nathan-Moss, and I'm the head of engagement over here. And what that means is I have multiple strings to my bow. So one of the key parts of my role is to liaise with our end users, whether that be trialists or customers, and really start to understand their experiences of our software. And that is what's good, what's bad, what could be improved, and feed that back to our product team to ensure that we're really building something that suits that customer's needs. And that started really from day one. And I'll talk about that more in just one second, because these are the things that we're going to cover today. So we're going to explain why user research is so important and has been so important for GridFox. We'll talk about some of the lessons that have been learned from doing that research. As Art mentioned, there will be a demonstration of the software too, and then obviously there'll be questions and answers at the end. And feel free to put anything in the chat as we're going along. I will try and keep an eye out and do things live if it's relevant, but if not, we'll certainly cover everything when I've got through these. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about this user research that I was talking through. So we found this fundamental in building our product, and I'll explain a little bit of a background before I explain then why there's a picture of a walkie-talkie building on my screen. So GridFox is part of a bigger organization called Audacia. Now what Audacia do is bespoke software solutions ranging anything from kind of 20,000 Great British pounds up to a few million. But we get to speak to lots of people and we understand different people's criteria and needs. And as we were building software for people, there became a trend that occurred, and that was we built it to a certain level and people were asking us to stop right there because it's exactly what they needed. And having done more research, we realized that this no-code tool was perfect for what a lot of these people are asking for. So that's how GridFox came about. Now, from that point, we obviously did lots more research and made it the product it is today. But I wanted to relate to something called the walkie-talkie building, which is based in London, England. And you'll see the connection shortly. But the walkie-talkie was built in 2014 after 5 years of development. And it was very much focused on the design. So it's quite bulbous at the top. It thins out towards the bottom. You can't tell from this diagram, but it's full of glass. Every side is glass based. And some argue that it looks really nice. I know it's got its critics as well. However, when it was built purely on its looks. And it then came to light that practically there were some dangerous problems associated with the building. The first one being, it actually created almost like a wind tunnel effect. So everybody on the ground level was experiencing high velocity winds. It could potentially be dangerous because trucks could blow over, people could get blown into the road. So they actually went and amended that so windbreakers stopped there being any potential issues. But the second and most significant problem was the fact that this concave structure here actually acted a bit like when you were back at school with a magnifying glass and you shine it from the sun and start to burn things on the ground. Maybe that was just my experience, I don't know. Because this concave shape was deflecting the sun and it was bouncing off the ground. But not only was it doing that, it was intensifying the heat. So they did some spot checks on ground level, and on certain days, it was like 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And people reported that their cars were starting to melt because of the heat. People demonstrated they could cook food on the pavement, and actually the pavement was potentially looking to crack in some places. So they had to resurrect that and put some kind of strip over it to stop it reflecting down to the ground. So the reason why I mentioned that is when we were looking at GridFox, we thought, yes, fundamentally, this needs to be nice looking and easy on the eye. However, unlike the walkie-talkie building, we also need to make sure that it categorically suits people's needs and there are no unforeseen issues that we might come across. And so what we did was we spoke to lots of people like Carl. So Carl is from a marketing agency. He's been there since its inception, so the early days when they were just a team of 3 or 4 people. He's now a senior project manager at the company, and he looks after a team of 3, but the whole company has about 20 staff connected to it. Now, unfortunately, Carl is experiencing some unhappy clients, and that is because the operational side of things have not grown at the same rate as the company has. So they're still using some of the initial systems they used when they were just starting out. And unfortunately, it's just not working for them. And this is true of a lot of people that we spoke to, and a lot of research that we did in the industry. And these are kind of the key problems that people are facing. So collaboration can be an issue. And things can be error prone, there's data security problems, the systems they use aren't adaptable, nor are they scalable. And I'm going to go through each one of those in some more detail right now. So first up, it's the fact that they are not being productive with time. And Carl can vouch for this because he knows now that having all these disparate systems around the business, people are spending so much time working on them administratively, and it's just not a practical way of working. And looking at some of these figures on the screen, 48% of people believed they'd be more productive with the right tools. And that comes from a global study carried out by Wumpol. And it effectively suggesting that employers think they're wasting their time with these menial tasks. 32% suggest manual processes causes inefficiency. So that's suggesting that with their time, they could be doing better things, some things that are more productive for the bottom line of the business. And 55% still manually add information to data in their systems. That was according to a report done by DocuSign. Now, DocuSign are a company who basically provide contracts for people, and you can set up templates and make it really useful to use. But they found a lot of people had effectively a Word document, and they were having to manually change that and update it for every client that they put a proposal out for. And it just wasn't a useful part of people's time. Now, the next thing is it's prone to errors. And this can happen on any piece of software. This could be a Word document. It could be a Trello board. In this case, the figures you can see relate to Microsoft Excel. And a study done by MarketWatch said that 88% of spreadsheets contain some form of error. That's a massive percentage. And okay, some of those errors might be as simple as a typo, but some can be a lot more dramatic. And the losses that you can see on screen by some of these people really demonstrate how Microsoft Excel can, when errors occur, be very, very costly. Now, with these top 2, I can't remember which way around these are, but one of them had a copy and paste error. Someone literally copied some data into the wrong cells, and suddenly they're at a £24 million loss. And the other one, someone simply added too many zeros, and that created an 11 million loss. Now, these are human errors. You know, this isn't to say these employees were incompetent or careless. This is just the fact of life, that when you have human error, it's going to always be there. You can't eliminate it at all. And to bring something into a bit more modern, because these are a few years old, in the UK, the National Health Service created a test and trace system for COVID. And in October 2020, around 16,000 of these cases went unrecorded. Now, the idea of test and trace is if you're recorded as having COVID, it will automatically ping out messages to all those people you've been in contact with. And there's a secondary line of people phoning around to say, you've potentially been in contact with somebody you need to isolate. So you can imagine the issue when 16,000 cases went unlocked. And the reason behind that was, again, due to a spreadsheet, because Public Health England were reliant on them. And unfortunately, they just weren't compatible with the dashboards they used to protect, to record personal data. So it all went amiss. The next potential issue is security. And luckily for Carl, his business has never experienced this. However, he is aware of the dangers. Even the fact that someone has a spreadsheet that they could share externally is a security risk, because that could house significant data that is actually protected. And actually, 2 years ago, the Mimecast Threat Center revealed a vulnerability in Excel's Power Query tool. So it's not just these small upcoming tools that could have security issues. It's literally something as powerful and as reputable as Excel. And what basically happened was they identified that because you can import loads of data through this Power Query tool and collaborate it in just Microsoft Excel itself, people were able to potentially embed malicious content in there. Now, the result of that means that hackers could potentially run malware on a user's device and access all the information on. And this is some interesting statistics that we then found, and it's that only 10% of business processes are fully automated. So this is still a very new thing in the software industry. And I think other industries have demonstrated this quite well. So to give you a personal experience, I've had the pleasure of visiting the Mini factory in the UK. For those of you that don't know, that's a car manufacturer over here. And I was speaking to a senior manager there, and they basically told me that over the last few years, 60% of their human staff have been made redundant. And the reason for that is it's been replaced by automations and machinery that comes in and does those people's work. And one part of the chain of production that I can remember quite vividly is they had a Mini wheel through on these tracks, and it stopped at this certain part in the factory. And they then had a mechanical arm come down and effectively scan the model of this vehicle. Once it had that code, it reached around behind it, picked up a windshield, put it into the car, sealed it up, and that Mini went on its way. There was no human supervision there whatsoever. It was completely autonomous. And software is heading the same way. And it's estimated that, 80% of time could be saved for SMEs if they adapted automation. That's a huge amount of time being saved by these processes that can be done without people physically typing or committing to those administrative tasks. And we also did some more work on SMEs. And we found that 30% of those reported that competition in the marketplace is their greatest obstacle. And that's quite important because some of these are up against these large players. And these large players have money to throw at operations and software. Now, for those of you that don't know, outsourcing development work can be very, very expensive. And even hiring your own developer can be expensive, but also time consuming, because one developer is going to take a long time to develop the system that you require. And so the great thing about no code, and this goes across the whole industry, not just GridFox, is it's really plugging that gap between SMEs not being able to afford these huge corporate systems and also moving away from these disparate tools that can cause all those problems that I've just talked about previously. And the other thing that was found was 25% of staff recruitment and skills is one of the biggest obstacles too. Now you might be thinking, why is that relevant for software? Well, actually, as part of the review, what they found was all these graduates coming through university, so there's next level of workers, it did have an impact on what people thought of a business. So if they see someone with the latest technology and the latest tools, they're more inclined to favor that business versus one that's still on paper and pen or spreadsheets or Trello or other tools like that. So that's how GridFox was born. And once we got that MVP in place, we started to get feedback from people like Tamsin, who identified that GridFox has been a game changer. With no technical skills, she was able to create a tool in minutes that provided a shared platform for tracking her projects. And Tamsin's been a great example of how she started off with quite a niche use case for GridFox. It was she's planning marketing activities, but then with her customers, she's identified actually we can do more than that. We can start to track our sales pipeline. We can start to use it with HR for onboarding new starters. And there's other use cases out there in education, in financial markets. So it's quite an adaptive tool. So on that note, I'm going to show you exactly what it is. So hopefully you can see that on your screen now. So this is the homepage of the software. And you'll see my previous projects in here and ones that people have shared with me. But we're going to start from scratch and we're going to click New Project. You'll notice there are some templates we've set up too. I'll show you those later on. But let's just get going and show you what it's all about. It's asking me to put a project name in. So like Tamsin first used the software for, let's use it for exactly the same thing. Let's use it for projects. Now, when I do that, you'll see that it brings up this blank screen.
Hey, Craig.
Now,
hey,
yeah.
Sorry. We actually can't see your screen. So let me share this back to you here, and then you should be able to share your screen. 1 second.
Got you.
Okay, go ahead and give it a try.
Let me give it a go. Bear with me. Yeah, that looks like we're in action. Okay, cool.
Okay,
thanks.
Yep, good to go. Thank you.
Thanks. No problem. So let me just head back to this home screen. What I was saying on here is these are all my previous recordings that you can see on my front page. We've got some help topics down the left. We are going to look at templates a bit later on, but for now, let's just click New Project, and this is how we get going. So as Tamsin did, we'll call this Projects. When I click Go, it's going to bring you onto this blank page. Now, as a current user, I've turned off all the onboarding. With onboarding, it will kind of explain what all these different things do. But let me just kind of give it to you firsthand. So we've got a screen on the left-hand side called Projects. That is what we've just titled our project as. As we work down, it's asking us to enter a table name. So let's call this project. Now assume this is like an Excel spreadsheet. So it's got a title, which is project. When I click into this blank area, it's allowing me to then start to add column names, very similar to what you see on Microsoft Excel. So maybe this project has a name. Next one along, maybe it's got a due date. And the next one along, maybe there's just some basic notes that I want to put against that. Now you'll see how these boxes have a little A next to them. And this represents the type of field it is. As I hover over, you'll see that says text. Now for the name, that works perfectly. But for the due date, I want something different. So when I click on this, you'll then start to see all the different field types that you can associate with these columns. Now, needless to say, the due date, we're best suited having a date column. And the notes section, maybe I want a bit more space than just a single line. I'm going to select rich text. Okay, and I can save that at the bottom right. Now it's asking me to create a reference field. Without going into too much detail, this is effectively a field that will have no duplicate data across the rows. So if all my project names are different, I can use that. In this case, I will. If they aren't, I can add a counter field, which is effectively 1, 2, 3, 4, and it will do that for me. So all I've done there is created this table on the left-hand side called projects. If I want to edit the screen, I can click on that button and it will take me back to the place that you've just seen, where I can add more things, I can change titles, I can do what I want. But as it stands at the moment, I'm ready to start adding some records in. So on the right-hand side, if I click new, I can put in these fields that are required. So maybe this is a social media campaign. And the due date for this is right out to the end of November. And create a presence is the small note I'm going to put in there. And you'll see how that lives on there. So I've referred back to Excel it is very simply like an Excel spreadsheet at this point. We've got the details that we've put in and the columns that are asking based on our criteria. But I'm now going to show you Explorer, because this is where it really starts to take the edge. What you can see here is the project I've created in a different view. So it's as a table now. Now, the reason why I put it in this view is because I want to start creating some data relationships. What does that mean? Well, let's add another table. Let's call this tasks. And I'm going to put it right there. Think of these as two separate spreadsheets at the moment. So the same way that I've added information before, these columns, I'm going to do it in this way this time, which is just the same information, just a different way of displaying it. So we'll put a start date, we'll put a due date, we'll change that to a date field again. This time we're going to put another field in there, which is a list field. Now, a list field is, if you're familiar with Excel, you can effectively start to pick from predetermined statuses. And as I'm doing this stuff here, you'll notice there are more options available to the left-hand side. Depending on what I'm clicking on, you'll see these options change. So on start date, for example, I can select it to default to today's date. On status, I can start to add these list items. So what fields do I want people to choose from? Well, a task could be in the backlog, it could be in progress, or it could be completed. And these little boxes allow me to, first of all, set a color, which I'll go through for all of these. It might seem a little arbitrary at this point, but you'll see how visually it's really useful later on. And you can select them as default items if you want to. So let's put a little notes column in there as well. Again, the great thing about GridFox is it's completely customizable to do what you want to do. So you could have hundreds of tables if you wanted on here. It wouldn't make any difference. And I'm just going to use the name again as this reference field. So let me go back to our project, because at the moment we have effectively two separate spreadsheets. I click into social media campaign. It shows the details of that campaign, not much more. I click into tasks and I can add something new. So let's just say LinkedIn, and we'll put the start date of here, the end date of here. Status can be in progress, and any sort of text in there. We'll just do one more as well, and that can be Facebook. Again, we'll put any sort of arbitrary dates in. Maybe that was completed, and that's there. So you can start to see straight away those colors at a glance will really allow you to identify what's at what stage. But if I click into these tasks, again, they're individual records. There's nothing connecting projects to tasks at the moment. They're like two separate spreadsheets. If I go back to Explorer and click on this little link icon, what I can now do is join it across to tasks. And so it's now setting up a table relationship. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with data relationships, we've tried to make this as simple as possible based on user feedback. So this is the one thing that came out from people using GridFox and getting a bit confused. And that is, what is data relationship? I don't want to go too much into this. There are different types, but for this example, we're saying projects can have multiple tasks. Well, that's right, because I set up an overarching project called social media, and I've got two tasks relating to that. So that works correctly. I'm going to apply that and save it. When I go back to my project, if I now click under social media, you'll see there is a space for me to add tasks in. And I can create them from fresh, or I can quite simply link these two next to each other. So now I know that with this project social media, I've got these two tasks to complete. And all my tasks are still listed down here as well. It's just that you can see them more defined to which project if you click into that information. Okay, so that's the first part of GridFox and how you can create those relationships. I've ended it at two tables. It doesn't have to end there. You can add another table saying activities, because maybe each task has a number of activities to go through. And maybe there's something else after that. it really doesn't end anywhere. You can make this as scalable as you need to. But let's go back to this view, because from here, we can now start to add different things. So if I go to edit this screen, on the left-hand side, I can add something new. A new table is similar to what you've seen before, where I can build another effectively Excel spreadsheet. I can do a Kanban board. Now with a Kanban board, this is effectively like a project management tool similar to Trello. So if I add this on, it's going to guide me through this process of building it. So it's saying, which table do I want to show on my Kanban board? Well, in this case, I'll use tasks. Which columns would I like to see? Well, I want to see this by the status. Do you remember we created that list item earlier on with backlog, in progress, and completed? Well, that's how I want to see this by. I'm going to click on next. And it's saying, what do you want to see on your cards? Well, I want to see the name of the task. I want to see when it's due, and maybe that's it for now. So I'm good to go with my Trello board, but there are some other optional things that I can do. And I think one of the things that's really useful is getting colors on there by status, just to give us that visual impact. And so very quickly, what you can see now is that I've created a very basic Trello board. I've got LinkedIn in progress, I've got Facebook completed, and as you'd expect with Trello, I can move these around however I want, and their status will update both in the table record and on this board. What I should add at this point is, this table data is paramount to creating these boards. So these boards are just different views of the information that's stored in here. But if I start to add things in here, you'll see how it automatically jumps onto my Trello board. So let's put Twitter in there, put another start date, another end date. We'll do that in the backlog, and we'll save it right there. I haven't actually tagged that to a project. So let me put that on social media campaign and save it again. When I now go to board, you'll see that that is automatically on there. I don't need to do anything to get it across. So that's one way of being able to display information. Another way is that I can utilize things like calendars. So I'm not going to go through all of these because I'm conscious of time. A calendar will create something like a Google Calendar. So where you see my tasks with start dates and end dates or projects, you can tag them on a calendar. And you can do the same with a Gantt chart. This one I will go through quickly because I know a lot of people utilize this and it's very useful for them to see the data in this way. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what a Gantt chart is, and I'm just going to go through these in order, but without trying to explain too much what I'm doing, let me explain what a Gantt chart is. A Gantt chart is a way of seeing your information on a timeline, and it's meant to help you identify exactly what things you should be working on next. So I save that right there, and I go back to my project. What you can now see on here is just a different view of this. So I know my social media campaign, and again, if I had more projects down here, you could minimize them and see them just by the campaign you wanted. I can see LinkedIn is due to start on the 8th, and it's meant to finish on the 17th. It's blue, so it's retained that status, meaning back from my board that is in progress. And I can see Twitter from the 25th to the 29th has not started yet. So another way of viewing that information. And again, you can really customize this to make it your own. And the final board that you can add is a dashboard. This is going to allow you to effectively create whatever you require. So maybe you want to see, right, let's have a pie chart. I want to see how many tasks I've got all together. Simple as that. So we can do that by status. We can count them, and that'll be good enough. We'll be able to see exactly that we've got 1 in the backlog, 2 in progress, and just to give you the reassurance that when you do move something, you'll see that that updates automatically as well. And again, there's loads of different things you can add in here. You can do bar charts, you can do line charts, you can do whatever you want to effectively track what you're using. So it's very, very customizable. Okay, So those are the different screen features. There are some other things I want to talk about, but I'm probably not going to show you at this point because I'm conscious of time. One of the things is the automation. Now, this is something that I touched on during my presentation, and that is, let's say, for example, I manage a team and I want to track exactly what's going on with these tasks. Now, instead of having to log in all the time, click through each of these cards and see exactly what's going on, you can set up automations, and the automations can trigger based on a number of different criteria. You can set automations to say, every time something new is added to this board, let me know, and it will do so via email. And you can customize the message and the information you see. Every time a card changes its status, let me know. Or every time something's deleted, let me know. Or finally, we can just schedule it. So send me some information at 8 o'clock every morning, for example, to find out exactly what status everything's at. So it's going to save me loads of time as a manager to have a snapshot of that information without logging in, looking at all the information. There's two other things that I want to mention. One, you can filter data. So if, for example, you've got loads and loads of tasks, it may be one of the fields you set up here is a user. I can filter these. I didn't set up user in this case, but let's just say, for example, I want to see all the tasks that are in progress. I'm going to apply that and I'm going to save it as in progress. What that will now do on the left-hand side is just show you those with that status. But the filter can occur for dates, it can occur for users, it can be anything that you want. And the final thing is, touching on users there, the ability to allow access to different people. So you can invite people to this project with a varying degree of access. You can have them as an administrator. So everything that you've seen me do, they could do as well. You can have them as edit only. So they cannot change the fundamentals of the project. This is all locked to them. They can't even see this option, but they can do whatever they want with records. So they can add new ones, delete old ones, edit current ones. Or finally, you can give them view only access, which means they can see the information, but they can't do anything with it. Those are the top levels of authority you can give. But you can also get a lot more granular. So you could even say, look, I want them to be able to see start date, edit due date, and not see status at all. You can literally go to that level. So I'm conscious that's a whistle-stop tour of GridFox. The information we receive from people is, yes, there's a slight learning curve to get going, but give it 30 minutes and suddenly everything makes sense and it's a really beneficial tool. To try and minimize that pain at the beginning, we have created some templates that should help you get going. And this is a work in progress. We're constantly adding more and more in here. But when you click on one of these, what you'll basically see is a preview showing exactly what it will look like. You can scan through it and see the information. That's similar to what I showed you. And you can use that template and it will bring it up for you with some dummy data in there for you to delete and put your own in there. So I hope that's been useful. I am open to any questions at all. I can see there's some things in the chat, mainly saying we can't see the screen. One person saying thank you. So I'll leave the door open. Feel free to ask questions. I don't know how you want people to do that, whether it's verbally, whether it's through text or any other method at all.
Yeah, thank you. I'll echo that comment there at the end. Excellent, presentation for sure. I think that it really, demonstrates the power of GridFox and, the things that you can do, especially with relating data and then having different views. I think is really powerful. And you didn't even really get into too much of the automation, but of course you can, set up all kinds of automations to better manage your project internally. So I think what I'll do, it's a fairly small group. So what I think I'll allow here is people to unmute themselves if they just want to ask a question, they can just come off mute and ask the question. It can be either to, myself, Paul, or Craig. It can just be about no code in general. It could be about GridFox, but we're happy to answer, any of those. I think there was a question from Paul. Is there any plans for getting on Zapier? So I think we can kick off a question there. And then again, if anyone has a question, just come off mute and go ahead and ask it.
Totally. So yeah, really great question. This is actually the next part of our roadmap. I'm not promising Zapier at this point, but integrations is something that everyone has been asking for. So over the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be cracking on with that, and I expect a release to come towards the end of that timescale. Our initial plans were to do the major tools that people have been asking us for. Zapier hasn't been one. It's been things like Google Calendar, it's been Slack and things like that, Zero as well. But Zapier is definitely on our radar for one of those that's hopefully going to come further down the line. But integrations is high on our list. So yes, they will be coming.
I guess I'll ask a question. What are typically the most common automation use cases? Is it mostly email notifications, or are there other type of automations that you can perform with the automations tool?
Yeah, at the moment, it is just those email automations. I'm actually quite surprised by this because I thought we'd get more requests for others. They just haven't come yet. And you've probably got the impression already, the way that we plan our roadmap is based on customer feedback. So we basically upvote things. The more people are shouting for something, the quicker it moves up the development line. And I thought automations would be big on there, but we're not getting a great deal of noise about it. So at the moment, it's just email notifications. But again, if people want more, we'll absolutely look at developing that further down the line.
Well, it also might be a good sign if you can accomplish a lot within the tool itself, you will need less automations by default. So maybe that's part of it as well, because you can certainly do a lot there within GridFox that eliminates a lot of need for automation. So it mostly, as I would imagine, and I hear you saying, it's mostly just external tools, like Slack and Zapier and things like that. But the table connections is really powerful, and the users is quite powerful. Is there any, maybe talk about the pricing a little bit, and how would it work if you had 100 users accessing, an application that you built?
Yeah, sure thing. So we do see varying levels of usage. We do have sole traders or freelancers using this as an individual, and they're obviously utilizing it with their customers. We do actually, I should mention at this point, also have a partnership scheme, which if anyone's interested in, please drop me information through, because I can talk more about that. But the pricing starts off at £10 per user. I'm not sure if people are from America or from the UK here, but over the course of the year, I think in US dollars, that's $160. In UK pricing, it's £120. And that will go up to around about the 20-25 user mark. Now, we've got companies that start to use this across all their staff members in every department. And they're obviously, hundreds of users in there. If it gets over that 25 mark, please let us know, and we will discuss kind of bespoke pricing for you. I think the other thing to mention is what you've seen here is GridFox Vanilla. So that is out of the box, you can do a lot of things. We have had people talk to us and are actually building for people a more bespoke solution. So it isn't your $10,000, $20,000 software solution. This is something that we're doing within GridFox, but we're just making it a bit more customized for these people. So you're looking at a few $1,000s for that, but it's not out of the question, because some people want this as a white label solution, and we can absolutely do that too. But the vast majority are using the out of the box feature at the moment. I've got another question coming in from Adhav, so thank you for that. Nice tool, it reduces coding and 100 times faster. One more question. Is it only for project management area? Is it only for project management or general apps like order, inventory, and other general company softwares? What about other controls like checkbox, radio buttons, etc., available or planned to add in the future? So there are things like that already. Now, if I go back to my templates, it will save me creating something brand new again. And there is an asset manager. So if I click on this one, how someone has developed this, and again, we've done all these ourselves just to give you an idea about what it could look like, is we've actually got assets right here. And this could be within a company. It could be these are the people who have these actual pieces of hardware. It could be for a retail environment where you've got X number of products and you want to see exactly what those are. And if I scroll along, you can add images and you can obviously do loads of different stuff. I think another part of that question was it a checkbox? Let me just bring that back up. About controls like checkbox, radio buttons, etc. Yeah, so there is something on here. If I just go back to my table view on this here, you can add something like a checkbox. It's already in there. So this might be in stock, and all it allow you to do is put a tick in there. I think that might be what you mean. That there's loads of different options in here. I didn't cover them all. You can have formula fields, so similar to Excel, but on a more basic level. You can have user fields, so you can tag tags or assets to individual people, which you can actually see. That's not been done on this one, but you can put different people in there. There's loads of different options on this. And luckily, we haven't yet come across someone who's needed something more on here that we can't already do. So it's a pretty exhaustive list, but we can again add things on that you think is going to be a benefit.
Yeah, is there anyone else who has any questions here? We have a couple more minutes, I think. So if you'd like to ask something, this is certainly the time. Craig is the person to answer it for sure.
And if there isn't, then I just want you to, first of all, thank you all for attending. And secondly, say, I don't know how technical people are that are attending this webinar. So if you're a developer or have any experience, that probably made perfect sense. If potentially you're from an organization that's not dealt with this before, I understand how it can be a bit overwhelming. One of the things that we're actually doing is we're offering a free concierge service. So that would be with myself. You get 45 minutes to start with. We can extend that if need be. And during that session, we can talk about what you're trying to achieve. And either I will help you build it, or if you're not confident enough to do that at that stage, I will build it for you. I'll share my screen and we'll literally get something set up so you can hit the ground running and then play with it from there. So don't be afraid of it. I'm here to help in whatever way I can.
Yeah, I'm sure that's we definitely have a wide range of people typically in these webinars, but I'm sure that's music to someone's ears for sure right now. And it's great that you have that level of support. And I'm just seeing now, I'll just ask one more question. I guess if you have an existing data set somewhere, you'd be able to maybe import that or upload that sheet into GridFox?
Yeah, you absolutely can. So I've just put my email address in the chat box in case anyone needs it. You can import data from Excel. Now, the way that I would do this, and this is just my own personal preference, I'll explain why, is I would export first. And the reason I would export first is because when you're importing back in, it will tell you if there's errors, but a lot of the time what we see is people have not put a capital letter potentially where ID is, or there's a space after this top column that they've not identified. If you export the data first of all, and bring it up here, as you can see, then you can guarantee that when you put it back in, these top titles are going to be absolutely perfect because you can see it right there. So if, for example, I just put any sort of data in here, I don't know exactly how this is set up, so I'm hoping I can just get away with one little column in the name, and then it's employees GridFox export. If I then go to import this back in, it should be my latest download. Yeah, so it's asking me for some more information that I can provide because some of these fields are mandatory, which I wasn't aware of. But you can just import it back in and it will put it right back into your system for you. So that will work with any sort of Excel spreadsheet. Again, if you work with loads of data and you need my help with that, as long as it's not confidential, then feel free to tag me and I'll help you get that set up as well.
Great. Thank you so much. That's really nice to have that as an option, especially if your data is somewhere else and whether it's like just local on your machine or in some other, online spreadsheet, it's nice to not have to, manually enter, loads of data for sure. So.
Totally. And I know that some people work in some weird and wonderful ways. So I know someone that had all their information on Outlook, because I think this was for a new business case, and they had all their prospects on contact cards within Outlook. Obviously, I can't control what Microsoft do, but we did find a way of exporting Microsoft contacts to Excel. And once this is in Excel, obviously you can do what you've just seen. So don't be afraid if it's on some other system. The likelihood is we can get it into Excel. Once it's Excel, then we're home free.
Yeah, thank you. And that's so true. I mean, there's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way. So it's great to know that there's support on the other side if someone needs it. So thank you for making yourself available. Is there any other like last questions? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And just as a reminder, again, it sometimes takes a couple days, but we will at some point email out a link to this video. It'll also be published on NoCodeDevs.com as well, so you can find it there. But you will, since you registered for this event, you'll get an email link to the video. So.
Thank you. Yeah, there's just one other thing that I wanted to say, and that kind of links in the fact that I keep banging on about how there is potentially a little bit of pain to get set up. We actually had a customer, as you can see from this quote here, who was quite tech savvy, to be fair. He got set up very, very quickly. But you can see from his quote that they've cut in half the time spent managing day-to-day of finance and reporting. So whilst there was half a day to get things going, it's saved him so much time in the long run. It's been hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think that's for me, what attracts me to tools like this and no code in general before we were even calling it no code. It's just the time that it can, save people within organizations, whether it's a product manager or project manager or whoever it may be. If you really implement these tools into your everyday work life, it doesn't even have to be for your startup or for your own business, but it can just be for your job. It can really make a big difference. So, I encourage everyone to try to implement tools like GridFox into their organization and use these tools to be a better manager, be better at your job, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, this is great. And I'm happy to be sharing GridFox with a bunch of people. And yeah, we appreciate your time for sure, Craig, and coming on and doing this demo. And I think they have your email in the chat, but we will also include that in the link out so that, if anybody wants to get in touch with you or has additional questions, they can. But is there any other way, gridfox.com, is there anything else that you want to sort of direct people to if they have more questions?
Yeah, so I think the parting comment would be you can try this software for free for 14 days through gridfox.com. And you'll get everything that you've seen here. We don't hold any features back. You'll get the full piece of software. Once you're in there, feel free to play around. Like I said, I'm there to support as well through that email. So just reach out and I'll do the best I can for you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again for your time. And thanks for everyone who came on this webinar today.